What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Nintendo Land, and of course today we have to talk about something that has been going crazy on Twitter. So ever since the preview event and people have actually gotten their hands on The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, there's a lot of people stating that they haven't seen anything with dungeons or anything, and they just kind of let the players play around with some of the tools and stuff and just kind of build some things, craft their weapons, craft vehicles, and play around with some of the sky islands and like an enemy camp down below. But there are a couple players that claim that they got pretty far in their demo and actually made it to some areas that looked very much like a dungeon. Now, they weren't obviously able to show this off, but yeah, there's a couple players that actually mentioned going through cave networks and stuff, and it led them to some type of altar or door which looked a lot like a themed dungeon. Now, before we continue, I am going to show you some tweets from some of these people that actually played the preview and what they had to say, and people that were in association with others. So yeah, you've been kind of warned if there's anything to even spoil, but I know how people are. But yeah, information coming soon. First off, we have Zelda YouTuber HMK that states, so that a bunch of y'all can relax, yes, Tears of the Kingdom will have dungeons. At the preview event, select players were actually able to reach a dungeon entrance, and Nintendo is like, nah, don't go in there, please. We then can move on to Gene Park, which states, dungeons in Zelda, ? I solved a puzzle and opened the entrance to one in the sky. Nintendo said, do not enter. I can see inside, it looks mysterious and unlike anything in Breath of the Wild. But the true nature of dungeon design is still unknown to us. Gene then goes on to say, to be clear, I'm not sure if the entrance I opened was to a dungeon or shrine type location, but I did enter complicated cave networks with varying paths. There seems to be a lot more design built into the map. Then Brian Altano jumps in from IGN and states, had the same thing happen, but I'm not 100% sure that was a dungeon. Yeah, this is interesting. People are trying to figure out what exactly this is that people were about to enter, and from the looks of it, it didn't look like a shrine or anything from Breath of the Wild based on the inside design. It looked completely different to people, but at the same time, some people believe it may not even be a dungeon, it might be something else, some other type of shrine or thing to explore and complete puzzles inside, which is very interesting. But I still do believe 100% that there are dungeons in this game, and there is some evidence out there, evidence that we're really not supposed to have yet, but there's evidence that there are going to be some sort of dungeons for us to explore. I will say the way it was described didn't sound like a dungeon to me, because if it's just solving one puzzle and then boom, here's the dungeon, it just doesn't sound very dungeon-like. You know, normally there's some type of giant side quest you have to go on, some type of big cinematic entrance as you get close to the dungeon, and it like kind of, it's clear as day that you're about to enter a dungeon. There's no mistaking it. So the fact that there's some questioning about this makes me think that this probably wasn't a dungeon that they found, but rather a smaller kind of, you know, shrine style of dungeon. But I still 100% believe that there are going to be dungeons in this game. Like, I 100% believe that. And a lot of it comes from different sources and things that I've seen. And the first thing I want to talk about real quick is some leaked art book pages. Now, if you don't want to hear anything about this, definitely feel free to tune out. But yes, there were some leaked art book pages that showed what looked to be the inside of dungeons. They were very themed. There was a lava themed one, kind of one that was themed after a sky or something, like really beautiful white themed. And it looked like they were the inside of giant dungeons, because we haven't seen anything anywhere near this within any of the trailers. Also, they showed some images of what looked like some puzzles and stuff that Link would have to solve, and like different things on the wall, like lasers and stuff that would stop him from going through certain hallways and rooms. And then we've also even seen what looked like to be the end of the dungeon, where Link would walk up to a pedestal and it looked like he was going to collect some type of tier. So maybe that's how Link gets the 7 tiers, by going to the 7 dungeons. Now, I don't know how they go to the different, you know, champions and then eventually Ganondorf and stuff. Maybe Link finds them in these dungeons and is able to bring them back out after he's completed it to give to a champion to wield. I'm not 100% sure, but it definitely does look like there's going to be some sort of dungeon. Something else I wanted to bring up, which is very interesting. Now, it might not just only be 7 dungeons for the 7 tiers. There might be a lot more than that. I'm talking almost like 10 plus, because of these weird shapes and symbols that we see on some of the landscape. Now, a lot of us had no clue what this was supposed to be, and what was the point of all of these things? Well, to me, it looks like that these symbols are some type of hidden dungeons or something underneath the ground that Link has to find a way to bring up, and that would be a really cool thing. Maybe there's some type of side quest nearby, or something that an NPC can help you with nearby in order to bring that dungeon up. up. We've seen in the trailer of different dungeons kind of rising from the ground, such as that one in the sand area of Gerudo Desert. We can just see something coming out of the ground, so maybe that's a hint that there's dungeons that are underneath the ground that we have to bring up, and they're all around the locations of these giant symbols plastered everywhere, which would just make a lot of sense. Now, obviously, the preview was set up for Link to be at a certain level with a certain amount of hearts and, you know, obviously a certain amount of clothes and just, you know, a good enough place for the players to actually do stuff with him and fight enemies and stuff. So clearly, Link has probably already on the save file completed some dungeons or shrines and stuff to get here. Now, at the same time, though, I don't think Nintendo is just going to let these dungeons sit in the wide open for people to find, or even anywhere near where their, you know, demo location is at. So at the same time, I feel like, yeah, Nintendo would not show any dungeons if they didn't want anyone to talk about them or even show them at all, which is the only thing that I just kept to my mind. But honestly, it goes back to that art book again, because those symbols were actually in the art book around some type of room or altar, showing those symbols down on the ground below as well as to where they were, and there was definitely over 10 of them. So it does make me wonder, these symbols have to have some type of big reasoning that they're there for the story and stuff. So I truly do believe that there is some sort of giant story explanation as to why they're there that's going to definitely tie in to probably something huge, and I think dungeons is still a good place to look for that. And I think that's generally what people are still worried about, where what is the meat of this game? Yes, we can craft weapons, we can craft vehicles, and we can go to the Sky Islands, but what's the point? What is the end goal here? Why are we doing these things? Is there some type of completion that we have to do? Is there some type of rooms that we have to visit and complete? Are we collecting tiers? Are there going to be replacements for the Divine Beast? You know, because they were technically 4 big dungeons in a way, but are we going to get traditional dungeons back? Traditional themed dungeons back. Dungeons are one of the most important identities to Zelda. It's one of the biggest takeaways for players, like ranking their best dungeons and the least favorite dungeons and the best bosses in the game and the worst bosses, and it just comes together, puts puzzles together, gives you items, gives you fun new abilities and stuff. And dungeons are just so much fun. It would be kind of a letdown to see yet again another Zelda game without proper themed dungeons, but I think they're going to be here one way or another. But let me know what you think down below. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Tears of the Kingdom and Nintendo in general, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.